Sometimes, hope doesn't roar back with thunder. It whispers. It arrives through the sound of tires on gravel, the quiet creak of a barn door, or the unexpected kindness of someone who still remembers what you once did for them. After months of heartbreak, broken dreams, and half-finished walls, Heartland stands at a fragile crossroads. The family that gave everything to help others now finds themselves surrounded by people who finally understand what that sacrifice meant. Season 19 reminds us that miracles aren't always grand. Sometimes, they come in small gestures that slowly rebuild a shattered soul. The episode opens with silence, not empty, but heavy with what's been endured. Heartland still bears the scars of struggle. The barn stands incomplete, like a sentence that was never finished, yet filled with stories of perseverance. Amy and Ty continue working within their limitations, patching walls, tending to animals, and holding together what's left of their dream. The community has moved on in many ways, yet something unseen begins to shift beneath the surface. A quiet stirring of conscience, a ripple that starts small but refuses to fade. 3 days after their lowest moment, when Amy nearly decided to sell Heartland, a familiar sound breaks the morning stillness, the rumble of an old truck coming up the road. James Morrison steps out, a face from their past carrying more than just words. His truck bed is stacked high with bales of hay, feed bags, and veterinary supplies that gleam in the sunlight. Amy's eyes widen, her voice caught somewhere between surprise and disbelief. James says simply, "You helped us when no one else would. This isn't charity. It's time we return the favor." For a moment, Amy can't speak. She watches as he unloads everything, his movements quiet but filled with purpose. It's not the supplies that make her heart ache. It's the realization that someone remembered. The gesture feels small compared to their mountain of problems, but in truth, it's enormous. It's a reminder that compassion, once given, finds its way back when least expected. Ty watches from the barn doorway, his expression caught between gratitude and disbelief. They'd been running on empty, emotionally, financially, spiritually. Now this single act brings more than just relief. It brings validation. It says their sacrifice mattered. Maybe, Ty murmurs softly, "We're not as alone as we thought." The words linger long after James drives away. They don't solve everything, not even close, but they begin to heal something inside both of them, a wound carved by months of isolation. That night, Amy walks out to the barn, the unfinished roof framing a patch of starlit sky. For the first time in weeks, the silence doesn't feel cruel. It feels patient, almost comforting, as if Heartland itself is exhaling. But the miracles don't stop there. The next day, another car pulls into the drive. The Rodriguez family. Amy's heart skips a beat, guilt rushing through her chest. She remembers the night their mare died, the night she'd failed because the facility wasn't ready. She braces for anger. Instead, the family steps forward, their expressions gentle, almost apologetic. "We blamed you," the father admits, "but we were wrong. You sacrificed your own progress to help everyone else. Our mare's death wasn't your fault, it was the cost of your generosity." Then they hand Amy a check. $500. It's not much, but it feels like the world. That piece of paper represents understanding, respect, and the first true sign that the community is awakening from its selfish slumber. Amy looks down at it, tears in her eyes. She's not thinking of the amount, she's thinking of what it means. 5 months late, Ty says with a faint, tired smile, but maybe right on time. The days that follow bring more small miracles. A set of vintage veterinary tools from the Hendersons, a workday organized by the Chens to help seal the open sections of the barn, and new clients referred by the Williams family who choose loyalty over convenience. None of it changes their financial reality. Not yet. But collectively, it transforms their world. The weight begins to lift, not because the problems are gone, but because they're no longer carrying it alone. As the sun sets over Heartland, Amy leans against the fence, watching Lindy play near the corral. The air feels different, lighter, almost forgiving. For the first time in months, she smiles without forcing it. Maybe this is how hope returns. Not as a flood, but as gentle rain that slowly revives what once seemed dead. And as she whispers softly, "Thank you, Jack," the stars seem to shine a little brighter through the unfinished roof. Hope had a strange way of showing up in Heartland, not through grand gestures, but in quiet moments when no one was watching. After years of heartbreak, the Bartlett-Fleming family found themselves surrounded by something they hadn't felt in a long time. Momentum. The ranch was alive again. Horses were coming in for training, the barn lights stayed on late into the evening, and the sound of laughter returned to the air. But beneath that calm surface, something deeper was happening. A change that no one could quite explain. Amy felt it first. She would walk into the stables early in the morning and find Spartan staring at her with a look that reminded her of Ty. It wasn't sadness, it was something stronger, like a reminder that the people we lose never truly leave us. She carried that energy into her training sessions, and the results were miraculous. Horses that once resisted her touch now responded with trust. Clients from across Alberta began to hear whispers of the old Amy Fleming magic returning. But Amy didn't call it magic, she called it faith. Faith that even in brokenness, healing could still take root. Meanwhile, Lou found herself torn between being a mayor and a sister. The town council had been pushing for a new development near Hudson, promising modern infrastructure and tourism money. But Lou could feel the unease among the locals. The plan would cut through the very fields that once belonged to Jack's father. Sacred ground in their family's history. For Lou, the choice wasn't about politics. It was about legacy. She wanted Hudson to move forward, but not at the cost of its soul. The conflict tested her leadership and her heart, reminding her that progress means nothing if it forgets its roots. Jack, though older and quieter now, was the unshaken pillar of it all. He had lived through enough storms to recognize the rhythm of change. Sitting on the porch with a cup of coffee, he watched the younger generation chase their dreams, stumble, then rise again. Sometimes he'd mutter to himself, "You can't force the future. You just have to meet it halfway." To outsiders, it might have sounded like another of Jack's famous lines, but to Amy and Lou, it was the truth that grounded everything. Heartland didn't need to chase miracles. It was built on them. Across the ranch, small miracles were happening every day. A young girl named Clara, who had lost her father in an accident, came to Amy for riding lessons. She was shy, withdrawn, and terrified of horses. But one afternoon, she climbed onto Spartan's back, trembling yet determined. Amy stood beside her, whispering words of encouragement. As the horse took its first slow steps, the girl smiled for the first time in months. Jack watched from afar, his eyes softening. That moment, so simple yet so powerful, captured the spirit of Heartland. Healing wasn't about fixing what was broken. It was about finding beauty in the pieces that remained. By the time the sun set behind the rolling Alberta hills, there was a feeling in the air, a quiet understanding that hope had found its way home again. But just as everyone began to settle into this new rhythm, a letter arrived at the ranch that would stir the calm waters once more. It came from someone none of them expected to hear from again. And with it, a question that could change everything they thought they knew about the past. The peace at Heartland was fragile. And in the world of Heartland, even the smallest message could set destiny in motion once again. The letter arrived on a quiet afternoon, tucked inside an envelope with no return address. Just Amy's name written in handwriting that looked achingly familiar. When she opened it, the words were short, but powerful enough to make her breath catch. For the things left unsaid, meet me where it all began. There was no signature, only a small drawing of a wild horse running free. The same sketch Ty used to make when they were teenagers. For a moment, Amy felt the world freeze around her. She wanted to believe it was just a coincidence, but deep inside, she knew this wasn't random. It was a message meant for her. Jack found her standing by the fence, the letter trembling in her hands. He didn't need to ask what it was about. The look on Amy's face said enough. "You think it's him?" Jack asked quietly. Amy shook her head, half in disbelief. "It can't be, Grandpa, but something about it feels real." Jack didn't argue. He'd seen too many things in his life that logic couldn't explain. Instead, he simply said, "Then follow it. Sometimes answers find us only when we're brave enough to look." Amy spent that night replaying memories. The sound of Ty's laughter, the long rides through the fields, the promises they made when life was still simple. Those moments felt like a different lifetime, yet somehow closer than ever. As dawn approached, she saddled Spartan and rode toward the ridge, the place where she and Ty once trained wild mustangs together. The air was cold, the sky painted in shades of gold and pink. When she reached the spot, she found something buried under a small pile of stones. A metal box, slightly rusted, with her initials engraved beside Ty's. Inside, there were old photos, a leather bracelet, and a folded note that read, "For when you forget how strong you are." Tears filled Amy's eyes. This wasn't a ghost, and it was a reminder. Ty had always believed in leaving pieces of himself behind, in case she ever lost her way. It was his way of saying, "You're never alone." Amy returned home lighter, her heart full of a new kind of peace. Not because she believed Ty had come back, but because she realized he never truly left. His spirit lived in every heartbeat of the ranch, in every life she touched through her work. Meanwhile, Lou faced her own test. The council's development project had divided Hudson. Old friends were turning against each other, businesses were taking sides, and Lou stood at the center of it all. During a heated meeting, a local farmer accused her of selling out the town's heritage for political gain. Lou stayed calm, but that night she broke down in silence. She remembered her father's words. Leadership isn't about pleasing everyone. It's about protecting what matters most. The next morning, Lou made a bold choice. She announced a community gathering at Heartland, a chance for everyone to speak freely and decide together. That evening, families from across Hudson gathered under the soft glow of the barn lights. Jack spoke first, his voice steady as the land itself. Heartland was built on trust, he said, and trust means listening, even when it's hard. One by one, people shared their fears, their hopes, their memories. By the end of the night, the anger had softened into understanding. They decided to reject the development and instead start a community fund to restore old farms and support local ranchers. It wasn't the easy choice, but it was the right one, the Heartland way. As the crowd dispersed, Amy stood on the porch beside Jack, watching the stars return to the sky. "You know," she said softly, "for the first time in a long while, it feels like everything's coming back together." Jack smiled faintly. "That's the thing about hope, Amy. It doesn't shout. It whispers. You just have to listen." And as the night deepened, a sense of quiet renewal settled over Heartland once again. But far beyond the horizon, something, or someone, was making their way back to Hudson. A new chapter was about to begin, one that would test everything they had rebuilt, and remind them that miracles often arrive when we least expect them. The days that followed were filled with a strange kind of anticipation. No one said it out loud, but everyone at Heartland felt it, as if something unseen was moving closer, waiting to reveal itself. The letter had stirred emotions Amy thought she'd buried long ago, and though she tried to focus on her work, her mind often drifted back to the ridge, to that box, to Ty. Sometimes at sunset, she'd look out across the pasture and almost see him there. His easy smile, his quiet strength. It was comforting and haunting all at once. Lou noticed the change in her sister. One morning, as they shared coffee on the porch, she finally asked, "You've been distant lately. Is it about the letter?" Amy hesitated, then nodded. "I keep thinking it's a sign, Lou. Not that he's alive, but that maybe there's something I still need to do. Something unfinished." Lou reached out, placing her hand over Amy's. "You've already done enough, Amy. You've kept his spirit alive, raised Lindy with his heart. Maybe this is the universe's way of telling you it's okay to move forward now." Amy looked at her sister, tears glimmering in her eyes. "Maybe, but what if moving forward doesn't mean letting go?" That question lingered, not just for Amy, but for everyone. Jack, too, had been quiet lately. He'd received a call from an old friend in Montana, a rancher who mentioned seeing someone who looked just like Ty helping out at a horse sanctuary near the border. Jack didn't share it right away. He knew how dangerous hope could be when it wasn't certain. But the thought gnawed at him. Could it be possible? Was there a reason Amy had found that letter now? Jack wasn't a man who believed in coincidences. At the same time, the ranch began to face a new challenge. A sudden illness spread among the horses. Nothing too serious at first, but enough to worry Amy. The vet suspected contamination from a nearby water source, possibly linked to the construction site Lou had been fighting against. The irony wasn't lost on her. What they had warned about was now threatening their way of life. Amy worked tirelessly day and night, nursing each horse back to health, refusing to let fear take over. She found herself whispering the same words Ty once said to her during hard times. One breath at a time, one small miracle at a time. In those long, quiet hours in the barn, something inside Amy shifted. She realized that hope wasn't about waiting for something magical to happen. It was about believing in the small, steady strength within herself and her family. Ty had taught her that, and now she was teaching it to Lindy. When her daughter saw her crying one evening and asked why, Amy smiled and said, "Because sometimes even strong people feel lost. But that's when we remember who we are." Meanwhile, Lou's leadership was being tested once again. The contamination issue made national headlines, and the pressure on her office was enormous. She had to face the media, the town, and her own doubts. But this time, she didn't crumble. Drawing strength from her family, she spoke with a conviction that reminded everyone why Hudson still believed in her. "We can't build a future by breaking what keeps us alive," she declared at the town hall. "Heartland isn't just a place, it's a promise, and I intend to protect that promise." Her speech went viral, drawing support from across the province. When Amy heard Lou's words, she felt something rekindle inside her. That same spark that once kept her and Ty fighting through impossible odds. Maybe the letter wasn't meant to bring pain, but purpose. Maybe it was Ty's way of guiding her toward a new chapter, one she wasn't afraid to write. And just when it seemed peace was returning again, a familiar truck pulled up to the ranch. Jack stepped out to greet the visitor, his eyes widening in disbelief. The man looked older, weathered by time, but there was no mistaking that steady gaze. He tipped his hat, his voice low. "You must be Jack Bartlett. I've been looking for Amy Fleming." The world seemed to hold its breath, because sometimes the past doesn't stay buried. It rides home when you least expect it. The sound of boots crunching on gravel echoed through the ranch yard as the stranger stepped out from the shadow of his truck. Amy froze where she stood, her heart pounding in her chest. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. The man's posture, his quiet confidence, even the way he looked at the land around him felt achingly familiar. But it wasn't Ty, no. This man was someone else entirely, yet somehow connected to him. Jack moved closer, studying the stranger carefully. "You said you're looking for Amy," he said in his calm, guarded tone. The man nodded, his eyes soft yet heavy with a burden. "Name's Caleb Ryan," he introduced himself, his voice gravelly. "I worked with Ty a few years back, at a sanctuary down south. He asked me to bring something to her if anything ever happened to him." The air thickened with silence. Caleb reached into his jacket and pulled out a small notebook. Worn and dirt-stained, the initials TB engraved faintly on the cover. Amy took the book with trembling hands, unable to speak. The leather was cracked, but the moment she opened it, Ty's handwriting leapt off the page. Notes, sketches, even lists of horses he'd worked with, all filled with his signature care and detail. But on the last page, written in ink that looked fresher than the rest, were the words that undid her completely. "If you're reading this, Amy, it means life had other plans. But don't let my story end in silence. Keep helping them. The horses, the people, the broken ones. That's how you keep me alive." Tears spilled freely down Amy's cheeks as Jack and Lou stood quietly nearby. It wasn't a goodbye letter. It was a torch being passed on, a reminder that Ty's purpose hadn't died with him. Caleb explained that Ty had spent his final years building a rescue network for abandoned horses, helping troubled veterans and lost kids heal through riding. "He wanted you to know," Caleb said softly, "that everything you built here inspired him to do the same. He never stopped loving this place, or you." The days that followed felt like a gentle sunrise after a long winter. Amy spent hours reading Ty's journal, page by page, letting his words guide her through the ache of remembering. She began to see that his legacy wasn't bound by time or distance. It was alive in every act of kindness, in every life touched by his work. With the help of Caleb, she decided to continue Ty's mission by opening a new branch of the sanctuary, Ty's Haven, right there on Heartland soil. The whole community came together once again. Old friends returned to volunteer, kids from Hudson brought their ponies to help train the new rescues, and Jack, despite his grumbles, built the first corral himself. Lou handled the paperwork, the fundraising, and the endless town meetings. This time, not as a mayor or a businesswoman, but as a sister determined to protect the dream her family stood for. When the grand opening day finally arrived, the ranch glowed with golden light. Horses grazed peacefully in the distance. Laughter filled the air, and the sign Ty's Haven stood tall at the gate. Amy stood beside Lindy, who clutched a small photo of her father. "He'd be proud of you, Mom," the little girl said. Amy smiled through her tears. "He'd be proud of all of us." As evening fell, Amy walked alone to the ridge, the same place where it had all begun. The wind was soft, carrying the scent of pine and earth. She whispered quietly into the breeze, "We did it. Ty, we found our way back." And for a fleeting second, she could swear she felt a familiar warmth beside her. Not in body, but in spirit. Back at the ranch, Jack watched from the porch as the lights of the barn flickered on. Lou joined him, resting her head on his shoulder. "Think she's finally at peace?" she asked. Jack's gaze lingered on the horizon. "Peace isn't something you find, Lou," he said gently. It's something you build, one small miracle at a time. And so, Heartland carried on, not just as a ranch, but as a symbol of resilience, love, and community. Hope wasn't a visitor anymore. It had come home to stay. Sometimes the greatest stories aren't about the battles we fight, but the strength it takes to keep believing when everything seems lost. Heartland Season 19 reminds us that healing doesn't come in one grand moment. It grows quietly through faith, love, and the courage to begin again. Amy's journey proves that hope is not something you wait for. It's something you nurture, even through heartbreak. Ty may be gone, but his spirit continues to guide the family, reminding them, and us, that love leaves a mark no time can erase. The community of Hudson stood together, showing that unity can rebuild what pain once destroyed. From Lou's resilience to Jack's wisdom, every soul at Heartland found their own way back to purpose. They didn't just survive. They rediscovered what it means to live. And as the sun sets over those endless Alberta hills, one truth shines brighter than ever. Miracles don't always come with thunder. Sometimes they arrive quietly, carried by the wind, waiting for us to believe again. Because at Heartland, hope never truly leaves. It just waits for the right moment to return.